Welcome to Attican Plays Railway Empire. All right, welcome to part 3 of our replay of the black gold scenario, where we're testing our pass-through rural station technique. And I must say, so far in the first 2 parts, it's done admirably. We're well ahead of schedule. We're hitting all of our tasks in a timely fashion. We've got a strong economy going, making good money. Our hardest challenge in this one is getting that $2.5 million quarterly freight revenue. So we're working on and it really comes down to expand, find more and more opportunities to haul more and more freight. And we're doing that by staying true to our basic idea, the basic technique, using the pass-through rural stations everywhere we can to connect cities, and we are occasionally looking for low-hanging fruit freight that we can haul directly to a city. Like at the end of part 2, we had just set up a concrete line into Dallas, because Dallas is the only city big enough to use concrete so far that we're aware of. But we're getting a lot of our freight from the oil, because this is all about shipping oil. So we've got oil rigs. We actually own 3 oil rigs. We're using 2 of them. The very first one we bought is shipping to Kansas City, and then this one we're looking at right here that I'm expanding so that we can ship more and more oil into Houston. And here I messed around a little bit. I mentioned this in the end of part 2. Messed around with trying to get those lines straight and stuff down here. A little later you'll see it. Didn't do a good job of it, but anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. So what we're trying to do now is just expand so that we can hit that quarterly freight revenue goal. And this would have been a good one to use Roger as our character, because he gets a 5% bonus on freight. And the other thing I mentioned in the last playthrough that I didn't do well was to target the research, so that I got all the freight bonuses. So got to get a better job on that. And here I'm looking at the refinery. We can't build a refinery yet, and we know one of our optional tasks is to produce 50 loads of petroleum. So we're going to have to own a refinery, ship oil into it, and then create petroleum out of that in order to hit our goal. So we're going to work on that. And we do notice here there's another oil rig up here close to the one we bought way back in part 1 of this. So we're going to buy that rig and hook it into the same line that's running into Kansas City, so we can haul even more oil into Kansas City. Because we've looked at Kansas City, the flow is going fine, there's no big tie-ups there, and everything looks good. So we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, which is buy that oil rig, make those expensive upgrades so that it's pumping out more and more oil, then set up a bunch of trains to grab that oil, and we're going to hook it into that already existing line down here, just merge it in with this line that's taking our oil into Kansas City, and just keep pumping that oil in, which is of course helping us hit any oil goals we have outstanding, but really where it's helping us now is helping us haul more and more freight. So I left that bridge there to keep the route pretty level. And that again, I said this in the last one, that's the kind of thing you can do after you've got your economy established and you're making good money. You can build some bridges and tunnels and make your lines nice and relatively flat, and make it easy on your trains. But early going, you got to kind of accept the fact that occasionally there's going to be an incline, because you just can't afford to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on tunnels and bridges. So now we've got yet another source of oil. So that gives us 3 oil rigs that we've got expanded and pumping oil into, 2 of them into Kansas City and 1 into Houston. So we are moving a lot of oil, and this is black gold, which is oil, so we're doing the right thing. And we're using the Columbia here, which is a true freight train, so it has the tractive power to handle that heavy oil. We've used the American on everything else because even though it's an express train, it has good tractive power and it's doing a good job of handling everything going on here. And by the way, I'll just make a quick comment because I couldn't, it's too hard to answer it anyway. So while I'm thinking about it, Nerd of Anarchy noticed on the last one that we had a log line running from, I think it's Odessa to Abilene. And at one point, there's a river right before Abilene, and going to that river, I actually have a 12-degree incline dropping down to the riverbed and then going into Abilene. So that means that coming back from Abilene, you would be going up a 12-degree incline coming out of that river bed to go back up to the elevation where that goes on to Odessa. And his question was, wouldn't that cause a problem, a backup, a place where potentially the trains could queue up because of that 12-degree incline? So I can't. Unfortunately, I don't have a save file I can go back to actually watch it, or I'd actually either show it as a video or just comment on it. But here's my take on that. First of all, you shouldn't have a 12-degree incline anywhere unless you just literally can't avoid it. So sometimes, like coming off a mountain with a logging line coming out of a mountain, it's fine because you're going downhill with the logs and then you're running empty back. Now, in the case that Nerd of Anarchy pointed out, we're going to have trains coming with loads coming either way. There's a few things here. One, the load coming out of Abilene will tend to not be full because it hasn't gotten to the logs yet. So it won't be a full train, but just the same, it's hitting that incline. And one, that's a bad design. I shouldn't have that there. But the fact that I do, I think what would really happen there is that, yes, it would be slow going up that incline, but then they would take off after they got up it and get up to speed fairly quickly and move on their way. So it would basically, in effect, slow down the entire line, make everybody run slower, but it wouldn't necessarily cause a queuing problem or a backup or trains waiting on each other because they would spread out over time. And as long as you don't put too many trains, and this is just a simple concept that we should all know, is any line, even with zero inclines, will clog up if you run too many trains. And in the case where you have that incline like that, if we ran too many trains, now how many is too many? Well, you'd have to almost watch to see. But the number of trains that we're running there, they will keep spread out. They will be spread all over that long piece of track in both directions from Abilene to Odessa. And would they go slower? Absolutely, because of that incline. Would they queue up and stop one another? Probably not. That's my belief. But that's just based on I've got a couple hours on this game and just based on observation of what I've seen so far. That's my guess as to what would happen. I think it's a pretty good guess. But anyway, enough about that. Let's get back to what we're doing here. Now we're running a milk line to Dallas. We're trying to push Dallas over the edge to 115,000. That's kind of a big thing we want to do. So here's an exception to our strategy. We're going to run a milk line straight in. And I could have run that milk line on over to some city over there to the west, like Amarillo's up there. That would have been a good one. And use that, but I decided to just right now I'm really focusing in on growing Dallas because we want to get that petroleum and get that optional task done. And here's another case where I'm trying to run something straight into Dallas. Again, we're focused on growing Dallas, so we're going to try to give them fruit. And one of the challenges with this map and this scenario, this area down here is surprisingly hard to lay track in. You've got all these ravines and places where you have to build bridges. And see, like right there, there's a great example. That bridge that I mentioned, I think on part 2, should never be there. I should have gone around that ravine. That's really poor. And now I'm paying the price for it because it's hard to even build another merge to go in there. And if I didn't have that bridge in the way, there'd be this nice flat piece of track that we could hook into wherever, and it would be much easier. But anyway, we're going to run apples. We're going to run fruit into Dallas, and that's going to give them yet one more thing to help them grow. And again, right now we're going away from our little pass-through rural station technique again to make an exception for our scenario to get that goal, that petroleum goal. So we got to get to 115,000 population in Dallas in order to even be able to create a refinery. And here's the other, this is a good time probably to comment on the other, from what I've seen of using pass-through rural stations, great approach early and mid-game. If you really want to grow a city bigger than, say, 80, 90,000, and 80, 90,000 is pretty big. I mean, if you had a whole bunch of 80, 90,000 city population cities in this time frame, in this game, you would be doing really well. But if you need to grow your cities bigger, you're going to have to diverge from this technique a little bit and do some of what we're seeing here, pumping extra goods into the city you want to grow, and also looking at, after they get big enough, you're going to have to look at your pass-through lines that you set up originally and run probably some freight-only trains on there. You may even have to convert the whole line to freight-only. In fact, it would be wouldn't be a bad thing if you converted the line to freight-only, either did most of the line or part of the line as freight-only to make sure that those raw materials are getting shipped, because what will happen is if the cities are big enough, they're going to start producing more and more passengers and mail and more goods that actually need to go between the two cities, and you'll actually start running full trains out of your station more often. Now, a full train coming out of the station is great. I mean, it's going to be full when it hits the other end and make you good money. However, if you want city growth, you're going to need to pick up those raw materials in between, and a full train won't do that. So if you may have to convert a couple of trains to freight only so that they'll pick up some manufactured goods, but they'll still have room to pick up those raw materials in the middle and do that. And now the other thing you could do, of course, is just convert it to a freight-only line and then run a parallel line that is passengers and mail. That would be really, really strong, because then you could start picking up express trains and your passenger and mail revenue would go up. Particularly if you put the right train, if you put an express, the fastest available train on there and got the express status, you could charge more for your tickets, and then you would have these two large cities sending lots of passengers and mail back and forth between one another, and also lots of goods between one another, and you would really be making some money. So, but that would require you to again set up that second line. You could run a parallel line that is passenger and mail only. So a good way to kind of morph to that next thing would be, again, move to a freight-only line for that raw material, and then that would move your goods between the cities, manufactured goods plus the raw material, and then have a parallel line for passenger and mail. But that's where you're going to have to kind of go to, you might think of it as phase 2 of this approach, where you really want to have your larger cities. And those of you who like to play, now I'm very scenario focused. I like playing the scenarios, getting them done, and quitting and going and doing something else. I know some people like to take these maps and then just do what they can with them. See how big a system they can make. Can I connect all the cities? How do I optimize everything? That kind of stuff. And that's a great way to play, a legit way to play the game. And a lot of people really enjoy that. So if you're going to do that, then you would need to think about modifying your approach after you get to that mid-game, after you built the area up using this technique. You would definitely want to start switching over to more passenger mail lines and freight only lines and more specialty kind of stuff in order to really grow and optimize your total system. So you can see there that Dallas is just almost where we need it to be, and the growth is it's just staying on the edge. It's just a constant struggle to get it over that 60% and get it to where we need it to be. We've got a museum in there. We're doing what we can do. We're shipping special shipments of goods in there to grow them. And here's a case where I'm looking at. It's not actually now, because it's bigger, that those 4 trains running back and forth. See how that one's full of mail? Here's a good example of what I was just talking about. The train is full of mail. Well, that mail's wonderful and it makes us money and all that, but it's not growing Dallas. We need cattle to grow to Dallas. So here's one where I'm just going to switch them over to freight only, so that we're going to see more cattle coming into Dallas from that line that goes to Wichita, and that will help Wichita too. I suspect, I didn't really look, but my guess is that Wichita is not getting everything it needs. And here's another one where the cotton is not getting quite enough. So there's a point where this technique breaks in terms of getting you done. But now here we go. We finally have just pushed over the edge. So I'd like to say that brilliant move of changing the freight only is what did it, but obviously that didn't really come into effect yet. So it was going to happen anyway. But still, all the comments are still true about the this technique only takes you so far. If you want bigger cities, you're going to have to come up with a plan B to move your freight and make sure that you're getting all the goods you need. So now we've got our refinery. So now that oil rig we bought way back when and haven't done anything with, we're going to start using that now to move oil into Dallas and get our petroleum cranked up. And I actually end up, I'll tell you, I ended up pumping up this station and creating a lot of demand for the oil. So it was a good thing because we could ship more oil into Dallas, but it really overdid it as far as pumping up the petroleum, because Dallas is really the only city on the map that can use the petroleum. So it's got to be consumed right there in Dallas. And this, by the way, kind of flies in the face of something I've said before, that you have to be able to produce and ship. Well, we don't really ship this petroleum anywhere, yet we get credit for producing it. And I believe it's because it's being consumed directly into Dallas. So the consumption of it is what you need, the consumption of the shipping. So here you can see I'm expanding the refineries up a little bit. So we expanded the refinery up to a 5.5. It needs 5.5 oil per week at its current size. So we're going to make sure that this rig is up at least to that level of production, so that our flow of oil into Dallas will match the demand in Dallas, and we can ship as much oil as possible. And there you can see that line we set in Dallas where we made it freight only. Now it's got 8 cattle it's shipping into, well, it's either going to Dallas or Wichita. I didn't notice which way, but it doesn't matter. It's now serving its purpose by shipping more cattle, which is what we really wanted it to do. And Dallas is, and there's where we can see where it is helping, because Dallas now is continuing to grow, even though it's already large. So it's up to 120,000, and it's still growing. And that's because now, again, I think actually one of the things was changing that line and getting the cattle in there, because meat's one of those fundamentals you have to have. And if you have the meat industry in your city, you really got to get the cattle, or you really you're losing two things that your city needs that are fundamentals. So now you can see we're at 67% growth and at 125,000 population. So we've got Dallas growing very well, and it also shows how really it was pretty easy to switch over and do part of that conversion to kind of that second phase of the strategy where you work on expanding your cities. Didn't take a whole lot to continue that growth in Dallas. Now we'd have to keep doing that with potentially the beer and wheat and other things that it would need. We'd have to watch it, but it was pretty simple change to do what we did there to keep the growth going. So at this point, we're down to basically transporting 1,000 loads of oil and having that quarterly revenue of 2.5 million. So one of the things that I decided to do was to buy Beatrix, just because I like to buy Beatrix. I like eliminating Beatrix. That's one just on an emotional level, I enjoy that. And also decided to get her out of the way, and thought I could use her infrastructure to help grow the freight revenue by switching those things over that she's shipping as freight, switching them over to us, so to speak. So we're in good shape here. We're over 750 with the transporting oil, and that'll happen for us. And keep in mind too, we're still way ahead of schedule. It's only 1895 here, so we're in great shape in terms of our overall schedule. This particular scenario, I mean, you just got to do a lot of work at the end. I mean, you got to grow Kansas City quickly at the beginning. That's tough, and you got to get right on that. And then the whole thing, and then of course you've got to keep on that oil focus. Make sure you're buying oil rigs and shipping oil. You got to do this little special thing with growing a city. It doesn't have to be Dallas, but some city, so that you can do your petroleum business. And you've got to really keep expanding and growing and growing and growing so that you can get that large quarterly revenue. But basically, right now it's just almost brute force. Just keep going, keep going, keep going. So I wanted to buy Beatrix and just get her out of the way, and like I said, use her infrastructure. And at that point, I opened 2 big bonds. And then I kind of realized, wow, my math is way off. I don't have enough money here to really do what I wanted to do. So I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm getting tired at this point or what's going on, but my brain kind of shut down there for a minute. So I've got these 2 big, huge bonds opened up. I got $13 million in cash, and it's not even close to enough money to buy her out. So here I punch in and repay the bonds, and so I just wasted about $1 million on interest. And I'm waiting to see just how big a bond could I open, and realizing that I'm going to have to grow quite a bit in order to buy her out. All right, so right here, I'm going to show you something that's cheap, and then I'm going to make it absolutely sleazy. Well, there's a connection bonus here for that iron ore, which we don't need, but we'll certainly take the money. So I'm going to take a little short line, run it in, and connect it to my line, and that's going to give us a connection bonus. Okay, that's cheap. We just got $500,000 for doing nothing. Now we're going to make it absolutely sleazy and delete the track that we used and the station and get a refund on them. So we got our $500,000 bonus, and it cost us virtually nothing because we actually deleted that. And by the way, if you do this, and I know that's just, it's almost one of those things you ought to just not allow yourself to do, but if you do this, believe it or not, if you keep playing the game later on, that connection, there'll be another connection bonus for that same thing, and you can just repeat the process and build your line, build your station, build your line, get your bonus, and then delete it and get a refund, and it's just free money. And it's just, you have to decide if your ethics will allow you to do that. It really is sleazy. It's like negotiating a contract with a group of businessmen or a city council or whatever. Hey, you'd really like to have this connection. You build the connection, they pay you off, and then you just destroy everything and walk off. It's just about as sleazy as you can get, but it works. So here's another departure from our method, but we're basically focusing on, getting that freight revenue up as high as possible. So I used a larger train station there to pick up both milk and fruit, and going to move that into San Antonio. So we'll have a milk line and a fruit line going into San Antonio, which is a decent sized city, and can take those goods in there. So we'll set up milk and fruit lines here. Basically, prioritize milk. So we'll make sure we're taking milk in, and then another line to prioritize fruit. And there we finished off our transporting 1,000 loads of oil. So that one is all done for us. So we're down to that big quarterly revenue. That's all we're working on now. And we're looking for any place else that we can ship goods and make some freight revenue. And you can see it's really crowded with all the track from the opponents, the AI competitors in there. It's just the map is just getting really crowded and just ugly. I mean, geez, there's track running everywhere. It's becoming an ugly mess of almost like spaghetti code kind of thing. But be that as it may, we're going to keep running lines, and we'll see if we can squeeze yeah, we can't. We can't. Corpus Christi isn't going to work well because it just there's no place to put a station. But Brownsville will work, so we'll just change our mind and run stuff into Brownsville. And you can see here how tough it's getting to build our lines. It's just too crowded with all this other stuff on here. And that's one of the reasons I keep thinking about buying out a competitor so that I can clean things up. And I'm becoming more and more convinced that even with the AI now building the quote realistic unquote tracks where they're double tracking, their track is still so not what you would want to do as the way you build your systems. And it's so confusing to try to just follow it and figure out what to do with the track that I'm still kind of leaning toward liquidating the competitor and then cleaning that, having that nice open space and using the money from the liquidation to build lines the way that you like to build them. So even though they've moved to the realistic track, and I think people are happy about that, I am still leaning toward liquidation as the way to go. And in fact, in this one, I do buy out Beatrix and I don't liquidate, and I kind of go, ugh. After I do it, I kind of go, oh, I wish I had liquidated. And remember what I said about that bonus popping up again? Now look at our money. We've got 7.1 million. Here we are at that exact same iron ore. We're going to build that exact same line that we built earlier, or close to it, if I can do it. Apparently I was better at it the first time. Notice we got a bonus of 400,000. Now watch what happens when we delete. We have more money. We delete the station. We have even more money. So we've now been paid 400 and 500, almost $1 million to connect that iron ore 2 different times. And there's still no connection to that iron ore. So now we're down to just our one task. We've got our one task left, which is the 2.5 million quarterly revenue, which is certainly the hardest one in this one. And all we've been doing this whole time is just looking for more and more opportunities to haul freight wherever we can, trying to do our research a little bit intelligently and get the bonuses that we can. And here's where I'm going to go mess around with this oil and try to clean it up. And I really didn't do anything. I mean, I could have just left it alone. It would have been the same thing. But I'm trying to figure out trying to see if I'm, created a bottleneck on my deliveries here. And I really think forgive me, I'm going to give myself an excuse. I played this straight through. I didn't take any breaks. I just literally played this for like 2.5 hours. I think I was just worn out at this point. I'm trying to pump more oil in there. And the thing of it is, and I was right about this, the platform up there at the oil rig has more oil on it than we're carrying. In other words, it's got more potential. We could be hauling more oil if we were doing it more efficiently. So I'm trying to solve that problem. So that much of it I got right, but I didn't really do anything here terribly useful to do it. What I'm doing now is setting up the opportunity to use more tracks, opening up more lanes into Houston so that we can run trains into multiple lanes. And if I could do this one over, I think what I would do is go back and just run a double track, have a single platform up there, at the top. It wouldn't matter, single or double, it doesn't matter. It wouldn't make a lot of difference. Maybe double probably would have helped load faster. But then have the trains alternate, redo all the trains to go first one into platform 1, next one into 2, next one into 3, next one into 4, and then duplicate them in sets of 4, and that way we would be completely spreading the load into those platforms, and that would have sped things up a little bit, and that would have been a good thing. And I sort of kind of do it here, but I don't do a great job of it. But I do at least give myself credit. I did set up the opportunity to use all 4 lanes down there, and what I'll do is set up an alternate lane here coming out of, in fact, I decided to open up a second platform or track up here on the oil rig, and then run that line down and hook it into the main line, and then use that line to run a separate set of trains off of that second platform up there into the new platform we've just opened up down at the bottom. So I'm trying to do the right thing. I did okay. I mean, I think it did improve it, but I could have done better. So there we go. Now we've got the opportunity to use both tracks up there. I've got a nice long queuing line set up for both of them, so they won't hold each other up. We can bring trains back to the oil rig on either set of tracks and run a whole bunch of trains here. So this is better, just not beautiful. So we can set up out of track 2, we can set up trains going in here, and then we can say, okay, the first one you go into track 3 in Houston. We're already using track 2 for our other set. Then we can set up another train that says, okay, come out of track 2 up here, go get full, and then go down here and load into track 4. There we go. And then we can duplicate, once we have that one running, now we can take that little pair and duplicate them, and duplicate them in sets of 2, and we'll know that we are spreading our load across those platforms in Houston. All right, so maybe this wasn't as bad as I thought it was. Pretty good job. So we have spread the paint out, and in fact, we'll empty out, overkill. Now, where I didn't do it, I overkilled with the trains, because now I got more trains than I need, because now they're running very efficiently, but we don't need so many trains, which is a good thing. If I'd been smart enough to actually do the math and figure it out, and run a few less trains. In fact, I will eventually delete a few trains. But now we can keep up with the amount of oil that we're producing up there and run it efficiently into Houston, which is really improving our income, our freight income, because we're running more and more oil, and each one of those loads of oil is worth at least $16,000 more, because we've got some research bonuses in there, but we're making good money on every one of those that pops in there, and you can see they're coming in there now at a really steady pace. We're just moving oil into Houston like crazy. And here's our backup, because now that we've got a more efficient line, we have cleaned out the backlog, so there's not as much oil there waiting to be shipped. Now our shipments are really good, but we don't now we've got too many trains, because we've got a more efficient system. We have too many trains, so I'll eventually go in here and delete a few trains. But again, I'm winging this, and I really should have done the optimization and done the calculations to figure out how many trains do I need to run. So this is a much better, all right, I'll give myself credit, this is a much better delivery system. The track and the line and the design is much better. However, needed to do the optimization and figure out how many trains are really needed to run that. And given the really good delivery system that we've now set up, could probably get away with just a few trains, maybe 7 or 8 trains versus however many I got running here, or 5 or 6 or whatever it is, and really have a good efficient line making a lot of money. Because you don't make as much money if you're spending all your money on too many trains. If you've got trains sitting around waiting, they're not making money for you. So, all right, I'll give myself a passing grade on the delivery system and a failing grade on optimizing the number of trains. How's that? I think that's a fair grade, a fair comment. But you can see during that how strong our economy is now. During that time that we did all that, just in looking at spending that time looking at that, we've accumulated almost $14 million in cash. So our economy is really strong here. And remember, it all started with our little old pass-through rural stations. So now we're going to look to see if we can buy her out. So now we've got almost $27 million to spend. That's a little more like it. And there we go. However, one little caveat, old Don Lorenzo has bought a few shares of her. So what we have to do now, we own all of her shares. We have all the shares that we could buy. However, Don Lorenzo has 9% ownership, so we have to be able to buy him out as well. So we have to accumulate enough cash to finish off the merger by buying out Don Lorenzo, and we have to pay him a bonus on top of the normal stock price in order to buy him out. So now we've got enough, we can do that, we can do our merger, and I decided to not liquidate to see if we could use her track to help us out. And this is where I went, oh, I wish I hadn't done that, because now look at it. Everything has turned blue. All her stuff has turned blue. So I'm looking at this and going, I don't know what's mine and what's hers anymore. It's just this big, massive mess of track running every which way. And I really just, honestly, my eyes are kind of spinning at this point because I don't know what to do with this. So I just got to go in and figure out where her stuff is and add a few more, because we're close. I mean, we're close on everything at this point of getting that revenue. But I just don't know what's hers and what's mine, and I'm just really scratching my head wondering what to do here. See, so here I found one. She's got a cotton line, and what happens is the lines and the stations will stay if you don't liquidate, but the trains all go away. So you have to go back in and reload or reset up all these lines if you want them to run. So that's our challenge now, is to go through and figure out, okay, where are the lines that came from Beatrix? Where do they go, and what can I run on them, and then start putting trains back on them. But it did work there. I mean, we didn't have to do any building in order to have a sugar line running into Houston, so that's a good thing. So that's maybe it's not that awful. And here's one, got a cattle line that we can run to Austin. And so we can run 2 or 3 trains into Austin with cattle, so that's good. So this is working out nicely. So maybe I take back everything I said. Maybe this was just a brilliant move to buy her out and keep her track. I do know when I was playing, and I was just honestly, my eyes were glassing over. I was just there's just so much stuff going on here, and unfortunately, it all turns blue, so it's all mine, and I really. It was tough. So still, I still can't seem to build enough supply towers. Now here's one. Remember a little earlier we had built this line from this wheat down to Brownsville. And I think she has, oh, and now what I want to do is run wheat directly into Corpus Christi down here, because now I can use her station, which is the one that was blocking us from going into Corpus Christi originally. But in order to hook it up in there, remember they use that technique where they come to that single line down there, and I would have to hook up back there almost backwards. So I decided to just delete some of this mess. So I'm getting rid of some of the connections here, and I'm going to run a line straight into that platform 1, and that can be our wheat line going into Corpus Christi. So it's a really short line, so I'm just going to run one train in there and let it do its thing. Now these bonuses for express lines, they're tougher because they require a lot of work. They're not as easy as those quick bonuses you get for putting a raw material onto a line. So now we've got wheat going into Corpus Christi. And we see that Corpus Christi is set up to actually have a line that goes to a city, and I apologize, I can't remember what the name of the city. We'll see it here in a second. There we go. Oh, to San Antonio. So we can run a line between Corpus Christi and San Antonio and just use her Beatrix's track for that. So we're just going to set up a basic city-to-city line between those two cities and run a few trains on them, and trust that her setup will work for letting those trains run back and forth. And there you can see one taking off. Looks good. It's running on the right-hand side. All looks good. So we're in good shape there. So we've managed to add a little bit of some wheat. We've got a city-to-city line we didn't have before. We've got some sugar running to Houston that we didn't have before. I've still got supply tower problems. Man, oh man. If you watch these videos to learn how to play this game, please don't watch the supply tower stuff. Just put supply towers in. Okay, so looking good here. We're real close to the finish now. We're knocking on the door of the 2.5 million, and purchasing Beatrix has given us some new options. Do we have to do it? No, maybe not. We probably could have done it by just continuing to just cram our own lines on there wherever we needed to. But I do think it helped, because I think it gave us some options that we didn't have before. And we've got the city-to-city lines running that had shut down for a while, so they move a lot of goods. We've got the new sugar line, we've got the new wheat line, and as we go through this, we can add more stuff if we need to. But we really are. Here we go. As I said, we were knocking on the door. All right, so let's see how we did. And it looks like we did okay. We got a perfect score. 10 out of 10 tasks, 20 out of 20 on timing. Highest score we could have made. President, of course. We finished in just over 6 years and way ahead of schedule. So I would have to say that this test of the pass-through rural station was a resounding success. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it'll help you become a better player, and I hope you'll join us for our next Railway Empire video. Thank you.